Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Kowalski, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure to be here today with Michael Ray, Professor Emeritus at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, author, speaker, and all-around great guy and one of my mentors. And I'm so excited to be talking today about the inner critic with Michael. Michael's made it his passion and his life's work to help bring out the inner creative resource in people and bring that to the forefront of business. Thanks, Michael, for being here.
Glad to be here, Stephen.
Great. And first, maybe we start with the inner critic itself. I mean, one of the things I love about the program Creativity in Business, where we first met, was that we were encouraged to create a character for our inner critic so that we could actually start to psych it out. And my character is called the Sneak. And I call mine the Sneak because it hides around in the corners and sort of lobs self-doubt into whatever's going on. I wonder, do you have a character for your inner critic or a way that you think about it and work it in your life?
Well, I think the idea of having an inner critic, having a nickname is really useful. And I've used different ones through the years, but I've been doing this for, I don't know, 30 or 40 years, preceded by a lot of work in social psychology that led me to do the kind of thing that I'm doing, spiritual work too. And so I think it's important to put the inner critic in its place in a certain sense, that what we're going for here in the course and in your book too, is to bring out this, people say that the only thing that's a constant is change. And we're saying that there's another constant, which is your inner creative resource that can overcome that. So that anything that gets in the way of that, the inner critic being the main focus of that, is something that we really need to deal with.
It makes me wonder about a student in one of the programs where I taught at UC Berkeley. And she asked, actually she said, I want to make the critic my friend. I think that's the best way to deal with the critic, is make the critic my friend. And you and I had some conversation about that. And I'd love to hear for this venue, for folks who are listening, why that is not the way to go.
Well, the first thing you have to think about is how powerful the voice of judgment can be. And one of the things we suggest is to find out what the voice of judgment is really saying for you. It's doing different things with different people. But when you begin to look at how this happens in your own life, you begin to sort of record what those things are. You begin to see how pervasive it is, how it's affecting you in so many different ways, unless you do something about it. And when you consider it in that way, in one sense, you begin to think, as maybe your student at Berkeley thought about it, that there's information there. I mean, it looks like there are a lot of things going on there and so on. Yes. And the voice of judgment, the inner critic, is really very, very sneaky. It says, this is the way you should do it. If you don't do this, you'll be in trouble. And so it seems like it's giving you good advice, but the only way you're ever going to get away from it is to really consider it to be the enemy, not the friend. And in most of the ways we look at it, and a lot of other approaches to this, there's really a zero tolerance for this. And if you have this sort of point of view, then the inner critic can't be your friend in any particular way, even though it seems like it could be your friend.
Michael, do you think it's possible, or how in the world can we get rid of the critic as a feature of who we are? We all have this voice in our heads, right? What would have to change in the world? What would have to shift in the way we are brought up in social systems, from your perspective, for future generations not to have to even have the critic? Or is that even possible, do you think?
So I think before we talk about a societal change, we have to change individually. And I think the way we do this is it's to recognize that it's a lifelong process. And that if we focus on being creative, if we focus on curiosity, if we focus on what's the tremendous opportunity we have in each situation, if we bring back in each situation the successes that we've had in that kind of situation in the past, if we begin to look at and remember the positive things that happen, then it's possible to begin to chip away at the voice of judgment. We can do other things. We can, every time we see it coming up, we can shout at it and say, get out of my life, and do things like that. And that's useful to do, which is not as effective if you're considering it's your friend.
Yes.
So you really need to stop from that. You can begin to see it as being really weak and ineffectual in itself, and kind of say poor VOJ and that kind of thing, or poor inner critic and whatever that is. And then at that point, you begin to make little victories with that. And it's surprising how quickly that can happen. And there are a lot of things in your book that lead to that.
That's great, Michael. That's a lovely place to end our time with that thought and practice, because as you say, it's an ongoing practice in our lives and not a destination per se. But thank you so much for taking time today to talk with us, and look forward to talking to you again.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Stephen.
Bye now.
Bye.